Note the disclaimer. The first word that always comes to mind with Rick and Morty is bizarre. I mean, it's some of the most creative Western animation I've ever seen. But boy is this show weird and kind of twisted. Imagine Ren and Stimpy mixed together with Futurama and Invader Zim, and topped off with a sprinkling of David Lynch. That is essentially Rick and Morty. It can be surprisingly hard to comment on this show. Sometimes after an episode, all I can say is, what the hell did I just watch?
Back, baby! One last swing for the road!
Ah! For the love of God, get dressed!
This show is unbelievably intriguing. I wouldn't necessarily call it heartwarming. Hell, there are moments I wouldn't even call it enjoyable. At times, it can be downright disturbing, bleak, gross, and creepy. But I just can't turn my eyes away from it. Despite its rough visual style, the ideas here are incredible, and the show is always smart. Morty is a 14-year-old teenager, and Rick is his brilliant yet nihilistic grandfather. Think Back to the Future, except Doc is a nihilistic sociopathic misanthrope. And Marty can't stop gratifying himself. Despite there being only 20 episodes so far, this was a really tough list. Every episode seemed to top the last in just sheer scale and size. This list isn't just the episodes I like, it's the episodes that left the strongest impact on me. As always, keep in mind it's just my silly personal opinion, but hopefully there'll be a couple of your favorites on here. Also, there may be a few spoilers in this list, but if you've seen the show, or don't mind a few spoilers, watch on, and let's take a look at the top 10 best Rick and Morty episodes. Not of all time. Number 10. M. Night Shyamalan's. Rick and Morty are trapped in a virtual reality by Nigerian scammers who rig the entire world to get Rick and Morty to give them information on concentrated dark matter.
We've got the President of the United States in here. We need 10 cc's of concentrated dark matter stat or you'll die.
I love how we're essentially watching the laggy MMORPG version of Earth, constantly glitching up as Rick tries to break the simulation. Meanwhile, Jerry somehow manages to remain completely oblivious to it all.
This is Earth Radio. And now here's human music.
Human music. I like
He just does his usual day-to-day work, not realizing he's in a virtual reality, despite it being stupidly obvious. Yet, strangely, it turns out to be the greatest day of Jerry's life. I think the Nigerian scammers are particularly funny and well-voiced. Despite them being aliens, I really do picture Nigerian scammers when I hear these guys. Then the show just goes insane on us, as Nigerians create a simulation of a simulation of a simulation inside a simulation.
You're inside a simulation of a simulation inside another giant simulation.
Only to be outsmarted by Rick at the very end. How did he keep up with that? Though I think there's yet to be a bad Rick and Morty episode, this one is easily among my personal favorites. And for number 9, look who's purging now. We get a really suspense-filled episode where we see a dark side of Morty we've never seen before. Jeepers! Rick and Morty find themselves in the middle of a planet in total anarchy. Well, a purge as they put it. And have to start purging right back. Just watching Morty suddenly let go of his restraints and become absolutely blind with rage is surprisingly fun to watch. This one leaves a bit of mystery about just how much we truly know about Morty's character. And I like that about Morty. He's not just a one-dimensional good character. Like real people, he can be unpredictable and barely holding it together. The action scenes in this one are spectacular. I'd actually call this an example of shock humor done well. It's far enough from reality, clever, and extreme enough to be funny. It's designed to be a really cathartic, satisfying experience. It's essentially a well-done zombie apocalypse movie compressed into 20 minutes. I definitely recommend giving this one a watch if you haven't already. Number 8. Something Ripped. The devil starts his own shop full of cursed items. Free items, but with dark consequences. So Rick starts screwing around with the devil, ruining his business. He does this by nullifying the curses and fixing the items with science. That is awesome. There's just something fun about watching Rick usurp the devil and send him out of business, making fun of him the whole way.
Don't pay for cool stuff with your soul. Pay for it with money. You know, like how every other store in the world works.
There's also an interesting side plot to this one, with Jerry trying to prove to the galaxy that Pluto's a planet. So he gets thrown on alien talk shows and joins cults because he's one of the only people that still claims Pluto is a planet. And Morty gets caught up in the politics of Pluto as well, as he discovers a secret conspiracy. And in the end, Jerry has to put his insecurity aside to do the right thing by the population of Pluto. It's a nice ending. Basically everyone has an interesting story in this one. To make Rick's story even better, Summer starts working part-time with the devil, and saves his life when Rick pushes him over the edge. Summer then starts a business venture with the devil. This leaves us with a pretty funny twist at the end. There's always these fun moral twists to Rick and Morty, which I actually really like. There's a lot of moral grey to this show, with very few clear-cut answers, and sometimes that's really refreshing. A classic episode and well worth being on the list.
Beyond comprehension.
Grandpa, go home and drink.
And for number 7, A Wrinkle in Time. Probably the most confusing episode of all. This episode is just a massive creative mind screw. Imagine the idea of endless alternative universes. Now imagine we can see 4 of those alternative universes all at one time, and they're all fighting against each other. And from there, it just gets weirder and weirder. The episode starts by Rick, Summer, and Morty having left the universe frozen for 6 months. This results in them essentially breaking time and fracturing their dimension. This gives us a very confusing but fascinating episode. We just get one bizarre twist after another in this one. Like beings from the 4th dimension invading our universe and trying to throw Rick, Morty, and Summer in time prison? As usual, there's a side plot with Beth and Jerry that is actually one of my favorites. I generally appreciate Beth and Jerry's stories because their traditional and normal style gives me a moment of breathing space before being thrown back into Rick and Morty's insanity. Interestingly, this is probably the only time we see Jerry do something uncharacteristically smart and insightful for his wife, Beth. It has a really epic suspense-filled ending with Rick, where we see a moment of real selflessness from him.
Rick! Oh! Morty, where's your collar? I'll fix it. I dropped it! I'm okay with this. Be good, Morty. Be better than me.
This was a brilliant beginning to the second series, and there's no way it doesn't deserve a place on this list. Did anyone else notice that the 4th dimension was made up of cats? This show is really weird. Number 6. Total Recall.
Oh, shoot! Now look, it's like a Where's Waldo page. Can you find me?
This was an incredibly creative episode. The entire family is locked down as Rick tries to kill the parasites invading their flashbacks. It was really that Rick and Morty branded combination of hilarious and twisted humor that left me both laughing and confused on what I had just watched. We're treated to this non-stop array of endless vibrant characters, brilliant voice acting, and there's a really clever twist at the end. This leads to one of the best action scenes as well, as the entire family bands together to rain laser fire down on the parasites. Trust Rick and Morty to show us flashback humor done well, unlike other shows I can think of. Family Guy. This one has drama, suspense, action, intrigue, and has an incredibly satisfying, if twisted, ending. I personally think it's easily among the best episodes. Number 5. The Wedding Squatches. So much happens in this one episode. Rick's best friend Bird Person is getting married, so the whole family goes to an intergalactic wedding of aliens and monsters.
Jerry, stop networking. We're in space.
Unfortunately, it turns out the bride is a deep cover agent for the Galactic Federation and crashes the wedding. The Galactic Federation puts the entire Earth under watch for Rick, and the entire family has to flee the planet in Rick's spaceship. I like how the whole family is at stake in this episode. They're not just a side story to alleviate the tension of Rick and Morty. I honestly had no idea which way the story was going to go the whole way through. I mean, the family essentially becomes fugitives and starts planet hopping, looking for somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy that is habitable. This gives us some really creative settings, like a planet where every single atom is on the cob, or a screaming sun planet.
Dad, how long are the days on this planet?
Computer, how long are the days on this planet?
42 hours.
We probably see more character development for Rick in this one episode than all the other episodes combined. Everything changes in this ending permanently. And it leaves us on one of the most annoying but intriguing cliffhangers I've ever seen. This one is a must-see. It's a phenomenal ending to the second series. But that cliffhanger! What is going to happen? What is it? A year before we find out? And for number 4, the Ricks must be crazy. Hopefully I can explain this okay. So Rick and Morty go inside a car battery of a sentient society from within an alternate dimension where their ship breaks down, on their way to get the best ice cream in the multiverse. The miniverse they shrink down to has stopped producing power for the battery because their miniverse has created a miniverse within their miniverse of a sentient society that creates power. And their miniverse has created a miniverse with a sentient society that creates power. Their miniverse has created... This is about the point that this show boggles my mind. It's a bit like that Simpsons episode where Lisa accidentally created a sentient society that worshipped her as a god. Except it's done Rick and Morty style.
Morty, you gotta flip them off. I told them it means peace among worlds. How hilarious is that?
This episode has a really funny side plot with Summer as well. Summer's asked to wait in the ship, but don't worry, the ship will keep her safe. It'll vaporize homeless people and emotionally destroy armies, then cause world peace on whatever weird alien dimension they're in. It has a really thrilling ending that left me at the edge of my seat, wondering if they would escape these multiple universes. A confusing but awesome episode. This one is definitely one of my favorites. Number 3. Anatomy Park. Rick starts a theme park inside a hobo dressed as Santa Claus. No, I mean literally inside him. Like within his internal organs. Rick and Morty is a show that likes its parodies, and this episode is a really clever parody of Jurassic Park. I love the colors, the scenery, and just the pure creativity of this one. Despite Rick and Morty's often rough visual style, we really see how the show has its own unique artistic art style in this one, and just what they can do with it. The side plot for this one is very take it or leave it, with Jerry's parents bringing peace to the family by bringing a polygamous sex partner to Thanksgiving? But fortunately, it's pretty sidelined by Rick and Morty's story. And the scale of this story just keeps getting bigger, as the giant hobo eclipses the entire country of the United States. Anatomy Park actually reminded me a bit of the Slurm Factory in Futurama. It's the perfect satire, and the perfect setting for Rick and Morty, with that great balance of humor and action. Hell, I even found myself learning a bit about basic anatomy in this.
Whoa! It's hepatitis C!
This one's certainly among my personal favorites.
Those guys are inside me, huh? Like building a park?
Those guys are inside you building a piece of shit, Ethan! They're inside you building a monument to compromise!
And for number 2, Rick Potion 9. This one is just epic, fascinating, and mind-boggling. But most of all for me, it was disturbing. In this one, Rick and Morty explore the concept of love in the most creepy way possible.
Rip my clothes off and mate with me for life.
Can we maybe go somewhere more private?
By giving Morty a love potion, in this case pure concentrated oxytocin, which results in a massive virus that spreads across the globe, causing everyone on the planet to fall in love with Morty. Everyone. So much happens in this episode. We get a world-scale virus that causes inhuman transformations to the entire population, except for Morty's family members. I can't say I fully liked this episode, but it left such an impact on me on just how disturbing and mind-boggling it was. And it has one of the biggest, most shocking endings of the entire series. It actually turns out Rick can't fix this situation. The world is essentially mutilated beyond repair, as the entire world goes from mutant mantises to grotesque cross-dimensional abominations. So they change the dimension to a time where Rick did figure out how to fix the situation, and they're both killed. So they replace the killed versions of themselves and bury them. And it gives Morty the biggest moment of existential realization that he would ever have in his life. This episode has this way of forcing the viewer to look at love in a more disturbing light. I also really liked the side plot with Jerry too, as he chases after Beth and ends up finally proving his worth. Jerry becomes awesome, going all Gordon Freeman on the aliens with his crowbar.
Jerry, thank God.
God? God's turning people into insect monsters, Beth. I'm the one beating them to death. Thank me.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
It's among the most grand-scale, mind-boggling, disturbing episodes in the series so far. It wasn't always pleasant, but this was probably the most memorable episode of all for me.
Here we are, Cronenberg Morty, a reality where everyone in the world got genetically Cronenberged.
Before we get to number 1, there is one quick honorable mention. Autoerotic assimilation, specifically for the ending. The last 3 minutes of this episode is probably the most emotionally powerful moment we ever get out of Rick. Just so much is said about Rick's character in these last few minutes, and it's all done completely without sound or voices. It was just a powerful, beautifully done scene. I always feel choked up after seeing this scene, and I think it's actually the highlight of the episode. It is well worth the watch just for that final scene. And with that said, let's move on to number 1.
This is because you don't give Morty Smith good grades, bitch!
And the number 1 best Rick and Morty episode is Ricksty Minutes. Imagine having interdimensional cable. I mean literally endless channels on your TV from an eternal choice of alternate dimensions. Now imagine some of the random, insane concepts you would get from these alternative universes.
Ants in my eyes, Johnson's Electronics. I mean, there's so many ants in my eyes, and there's so many TV.
Rick and Morty sit down to watch interdimensional cable, and that's about it. It's just the writers having fun.
Huh? Seems like TV from other dimensions has a somewhat looser feel to it.
Yeah, it's got an almost improvisational tone.
There was also a second version of this, Interdimensional Cable 2. This was also really creative, but I just thought this first one had this real magic to it that couldn't be topped. It's one of those times that I just felt, I don't want to look at the deeper politics. I don't want to question my place in the universe either. Right now, I'd rather just sit back and watch some amazing creative ideas. And that's exactly what Rick and Morty do for the whole episode. I'm glad they did another of these, even if it wasn't quite as good, because I honestly feel like I could watch these random bizarre channels with Rick and Morty commentating for hours.
I see demons are coming! Jeez, Rick, oh my god! That's some pretty hardcore stuff for a cereal commercial.
It's just a much needed break from Rick and Morty's usual existential dilemmas, to just relax and watch some really creative TV for a while. And the final speech from Morty is essentially existential therapy summed up in 10 seconds.
I'm a version of your brother you can trust when he says don't run. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
It even has a beautiful ending for Beth and Jerry, as they discover even in the chaos and uncertainty of their universe, they always had a connection between one another. It's an episode that is relaxing, fun, and pleasant all the way through, with a really touching ending to top it all off. I actually would have liked to see this as the last episode of the series. Wedding Squatches was a great cliffhanger and was compelling, but it didn't leave me with the same great feeling that this episode did. I know that feeling good isn't really Rick and Morty's style, but it would have been more the kind of ending I would have enjoyed. And I guess that's just my personal taste.
Well, how does that work? I mean, do the butts look like little apartments inside?
All right, that's it. We're just gonna go there so you idiots can ask your stupid questions all day.
Oh, family vacation!
Rick and Morty has this interesting way of forcing this perspective of our universe on us as a chaotic, unpredictable, and endlessly vast place, where our insignificance is laughable. But they manage to do this while making me laugh all the way through. It's one of those times in a cartoon where I've been happy to go to a dark place, because I know I'll be laughing and awestruck all the way through. Personally, I'm looking forward to seeing what twisted and crazy places Rick and Morty go to next. Do you think the other 10 episodes deserve these places? Do you have a particular favorite yourself? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
You know, you were right about the universe. It's a crazy and chaotic place.
Well, maybe that's why it could use a little cleaning up every now and then,